Well, hey, thanks everybody for joining again for Power BI Monthly Digest. My name is Devin Knight, and
Matt Peterson.
I'm here with Matt, and we are actually covering today the April Power BI updates, which came out in May.
Yes.
So there were no updates in April. You're going to probably see two updates in May, but these are the April version delivered through May. So a little bit of oddness there. Part of the reason for that, by the way, was they had a big conference at the beginning of the month, the Microsoft Business Application Summit. They wanted to make some big announcements there. So they held the latest version of the Power BI desktop till then to make some of those announcements then. But we have some really cool stuff to show today, right?
Yep. Well, I was just going to say, just like I'm holding off getting a haircut.
Yes.
As well, so therefore,
Yes.
If it gets in the eyes, don't let it distract you.
And I went the opposite. I have some razors at home. I had my wife just say, get rid of it all. And this is what happens whenever I do something like that. So, but we have some pretty cool stuff today, right?
Yeah, a lot of stuff. A lot of updates were packed in this one as opposed to the previous month's updates, which weren't nearly as much. So we got a lot to cover today. So.
Yeah. So the first thing I think we'll touch on is something they've been delaying for a little bit. They're continuing to delay the filter pane change,
Yeah, because
right?
we had talked about last month, hey, make sure all of your reports work with the new filter pane experience because the old one's going away.
Right.
Well, because of COVID, they said in the next update, May, that's when the filter pane will really be in effect, and that's the only one that you can use.
Gotcha. And the other kind of significant, I don't know if you want to call it significant change, it's an aesthetic change that they made, was the icons for the visuals, right?
Yeah, the icons in our visualization pane have that high contrast blue color. So it takes a little bit to get used to because you're not seeing, all you're basically seeing are the blues and the grays now.
And we'll take a peek at that as we get into our first demo. They'll definitely notice, if they haven't noticed on their own already, there's a small little change in the icons that appear. Probably the biggest update for this month, though, and a lot of people are really excited about, is the personalization that you can now do on visuals. Can you talk about that a little bit? What does that give us?
Yeah, so previously, like if you would publish out and you were reading my report and you're like, hey, I want this visual to look a little bit different. I want it to show as a map instead. Well, you didn't have access to do that if you were I just shared it with you just to read only.
Right.
So you would have to come to me, say, hey, can you go fix this? I'd have to go back, rework it out, republish it to you, or share separate files, see if you really like it, and then make that change. But now with Personalize Visual tool, we can control what visuals we allow our end users to personalize if they want to. And then that's not going to, so don't worry, it's not going to change your final report. It's only going to change on their end, and they'll just take a bookmark of that. And then if they put that bookmark, they can access that anytime they want to. And then they can share it with you and say, hey, I think I did a better report creation than you did.
Well, very cool. I think that's probably worth our first demo here.
Yeah,
so let's go ahead and switch over, take a look at our first demonstration here. Matt, walk us through it.
Yeah, so again, these are all the features we're showing you today for the most part are preview features. So make sure you go to your file and go into your options and settings and turn all these preview features on. That way you don't get in the middle of something and then have to do a hard start over again. So these are all the preview features, and this is the first one we're going to be talking about, which is our Personalized Visuals one. So we have it turned on. Once you have it turned on, the next thing you have to do, if you want this to be part of the report that you have now loaded, you have to go into your current file report settings, and you're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you're going to put the check mark. Okay, so Personalized Visuals. This allows you to say if people can personalize it or not. So we've turned it on for this one. We're going to click on OK here. And what you now have the ability to do is when we hover over a visual, we see some new icons here. And so if we click on the new icon that we've not seen before, we see that this visual can be personalized by report readers. So if I publish this to the service right now, anyone I share it with can personalize. Now maybe you don't want that to happen for everybody. So maybe we want this tree map to stay exactly as is and not have anyone be able to personalize it. So if I click on the tree map, and then I'm going to come over into my formatting options. I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom under our visual headers. We're going to expand that down. And then we're going to go all the way down to the bottom. And right now, Personalized Visual, I've already turned it to off. So currently they don't have that ability. So if I go, you know what, I do want them to be able to personalize it, I go to on, and then they'll see that icon right here.
So the default is on, though. If you want to turn it off for other things, you'll have to go touch every visual.
You got to touch every visual. But you can do control select on these. So if you know that you have 3 or 4 that you don't want them to mess with, highlight all of them and then turn the personalized visual off.
Yeah.
So we've already published this out to the service. So let's take a look at what our end user is going to see here.
So the experience for this is really in the Power BI service, right? So you wouldn't you wouldn't do any of this from the desktop. That's not the point of this feature,
Correct.
right?
The desktop is only going to allow you to turn the features on and off for the people, for your end user. So we've published this, and so let's say, Devin, you were looking at this and you said, well, I don't like that we've got a column chart here. I want to change it over. So with this visual, I've just gone to our report. I click on my personalized visual icon, and we got some pretty cool features. It's very similar to what you would see in the desktop.
Yeah.
Visualization type, once we click on it, we get our pop-out box of what we might want to change it to. I don't know, so we got countries on here, so map probably is a good thing that you might want to see instead. And then it changes our visual over to a map. And then you have all the same capabilities of adding things to this if you wanted to, and changing the visual how you see best fit.
But it's interesting there too, is it looks like I see a custom visual here. So it looks like if you have a custom visual included as part of the file, that is also something that's available to your users here as well, right?
Yep. Once you publish it, if that was what visual you had imported, that's going to be available to them as well.
Nice.
Yeah. And so what would happen, so let's say you like what you've done with this. I'm going to click on the X right here. And then from here, we can go up to the bookmarks in the upper part of the window. And we can click on a personal bookmark, and we can add a personal bookmark. So this is for the next time that you log in. If you make this bookmark, you will be able to, and we'll just say the map view. We're going to click on save. And so the next time you come in, when you log back in initially, so let me show you that. So I'm just going to click on something random, and then go back into that workspace we were just in, which was our monthly digest. And we're going to go back into that report. And from here, if we look, back to normal. We're back to the default. So if you wanted to see what you looked at last time where your bookmark, you go back to your bookmarks, click on map view, and now it looks like the way that you want it to look.
That's really cool. I like that. That's an awesome feature. And I know users are kind of clamoring for that ability to customize things to suit their need a little bit. And not only could they customize their needs, they can move fields around. They had a little extra capability in there as well. So that's really cool. All right, good deal. So next thing I think we have is kind of getting into and discussing some of the change detection features that they have, right? They made some improvements here?
Yes, they did. So anytime that you would go and do that refresh with the direct query, it's always pulling out that data, seeing what things have changed. And to lighten that load, and now this is a premium only feature, so before I forget to mention that, premium only, so you got to pay that money. But what we can do is we can make a light query run in the background to see if there's been a detection change. So rather than going and just keep refreshing with automatic page refresh, we go, was there a change here?
Right.
If there was, now let's go and do the full refresh.
Gotcha.
So what we can do is let's go into the desktop here. I've got a direct query pulled up here. And there's a few different ways, 3 main ways, but the 2 ways I found the most useful to get there is if we click on the modeling in the upper part of our window, and we have this new page refresh called change detection. So I'm going to click on change detection, and that's going to open up my change detection window. Now, this change detection only works with a measure. So that's another thing to think about. It only works with the measure. So you can use existing measures that you currently have, or you can make a new measure if you wanted to. So I'm going to come down to where I've made a measure for us for this already. And it's way down here, so give me a sec. And it's in my sales table, and I've got a measure called total sales amount. And so when I put this total sales amount in here, actually I don't have it. Well, what would happen? This was not in here. Let me come back to here.
Oh, internet sales. There you go.
Yeah, internet sales. And I got a profit margin one, so I'll just use profit margin instead. So if I put profit margin here, I can then check for a change every 5 minutes. And if they see a new profit margin has changed, it's going to go in there and update all of our data for us.
Oh, that's really cool. And you said you can actually create new measures.
You can create a new measure on the fly as well.
Nice.
If you want to. So one might be like a count. Like I was thinking customer PO numbers.
Yeah.
So if all of a sudden it sees a new count for the customer PO column, it knows that, hey, we have a new order. Let's update our data.
Now, is this something that's happening with, is this a direct query feature to kind of refresh the page, or is this actually refreshing the data with imports? Or kind of talk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, what is happening is it's happening through that direct query feature.
Okay.
And so that way you're not, because that every time you go out to that visual and you're changing things, it's looking at that data, pushing that query through.
Yeah.
And so this way we're not importing all the data in. But we're gonna save some resources and some processing power.
And it's only really then refreshing what the view on the page is whenever there is a change, and in this case profit margin, but I like your example even better, a count of order numbers or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. That's a really cool feature. So I'm excited about that one. Again, probably worth pointing out again. You mentioned the fact that
Again, let's point this out right here. We have got premium feature right here.
Yeah, what Matt's pointing you to there. Anytime you see that diamond icon means premium in some way. So you know when you see that you need to be under some kind of premium workspace to actually use this. Now you can play around with it in the desktop, but whenever you go to publish, it's only going to really be an option for you whenever you go to a premium workspace.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So
that.
the next thing I think we're going to talk about then is a new feature that's in preview as well around the time slicer, or really adding a time slicer that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
So we had a relative date slicer that's been around for a bit now, but the new feature that we're going to be looking at is related to time, right?
Yeah, relative time feature, which is going to give you up to the minute how things are changing over a certain metric, down to the second level.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So it probably makes sense to really use this when you are using something like direct query or data streaming in and things like that. But you could certainly play around with it in any scenario. In fact, I think we have an example here, right?
Yeah, I think we do. So over here, just on our regular landing page, we have this. We just put in a full date key for a slicer, just going by dates.
And it has date time in it.
Date time in it, yes. And so if I click on the drop down, this is where you see something new. Up until this update, we had relative date, but now we have relative time.
Mm-hmm.
So if I change this over to relative time, it's now going to ask me how I want to do this. I can go in the last one, and then our options are minutes and hours.
Okay.
So that is the level of detail that you can get it into.
Right.
So if we just put in, for example, last hour, we're not going to see anything because we're not getting, data isn't being refreshed, for this scenario. But if you're measuring like tweet counts or your sales, fast food chains measuring how many transactions they've had, they can get a very quick view of how it's changing throughout the day.
Yeah, it makes sense. I could see even using this with some of the streaming data sets as well. So I'm streaming in data and I want to be able to see the last hour's worth of tweets, last hour's worth of transactions, whatever it might be. This is a really nice feature to be able to filter it if you're looking at really up to the minute or up to the hour kind of stuff. Now, what else do they have besides last here? Can you do anything else?
Let me zoom on in here. So other than last, we have some other good features in here. We have next and we have this.
Okay, so if you were looking at maybe budgeting by the hour or something like that,
yes.
or you had an expected number of transactions per hour and you wanted to be able to see over the next hour what we're expecting, you could do something like that. Or it could be this 1 hour, the hour that we're currently in. There's a lot of cool things you could do there as well, right?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Okay, very cool. All right, let's switch back here. So that's a really cool feature. I think that one's interesting. The next one that we're going to look at is definitely something for more the report author. And I kind of make the analogy of it makes it feel more like Power BI can act like PowerPoint a little bit. A lot of the things that you can do with PowerPoint are working their way here as far as how you interact with images in a slide, or in this case, visuals in a report. So tell us about the new update here.
Yeah, so this is Lasso Visual. So and I use this in OneNote all the time with the Microsoft product. Where I have a whole bunch of things that I just want to delete all at one point. I put a lasso around it, and I click delete, and it's gone. Or if I want to move a whole bunch of objects all at one time and keep the spacing the same, I've lassoed them in OneNote. Now we've got that ability to do it here in Power BI.
Nice. Let's take a look.
Yeah, this is a real quick one. So there's any page that you go, I'm going to go onto our personal example here. Let's get rid of this filter. We don't need it anymore. All right, so let's say I wanted to take the column chart here as well as my tree map, and I wanted to copy and paste those onto a new page. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to control click, and now you can see that I've got this gray box coming. And right now, you see the anchor points around my first chart on the left. So it's currently going to be in my selection. If I keep going to the right, now I have the anchor points around my tree map.
That's how you know what you've actually got. Okay.
That's how you know what you've selected. So I currently have them selected. So if I just do a Control-C copy, and then I'm going to come over down here to my Lasso land page, I'm going to paste them in.
Nice.
And right now they're still a group. So they're still both selected. And if I move them, they move together as a group. And then if I go, well, you know what? I'm going to go back to here. My personal visual example. Let's say I had those selected. So I'm going to come back down here. And I thought I had the top one with it as well, but it didn't get there. If I do Control and I put another lasso around here, it will add it into my group.
Nice. That's cool. I like that.
And if I said, well, you know what, and I really don't want it, if I do Control again and highlight it, it will take it out of my group.
Huh.
So it's just a very quick user capability. Could we have Control clicked and done copy and pasting? Yes, but this it keeps that spacing nice, so where you're not going to have to remodify it later on the next page.
And it keeps that experience that you're probably used to anyways in other tools. You can finally now do that here with inside Power BI. Cool. Well, I think the next thing that we're going to look at is some conditional formatting updates, right?
Yeah, conditional formatting updates that I think a lot of people were wanting to put in their reports. Previously in our matrix, you couldn't really control, you didn't have full functionality of the control of all of your totals, just your values. And with this new conditional formatting, we can apply it to the values, we can apply it to just the totals, and we can do it to values and totals. So it's going to be what's going to be the best for your scenario.
Cool. Let's take a peek.
Yeah. So what I have pulled up here is this matrix pulled up by year and quarters. And if I want to bring someone's attention to these numbers by saying, hey, these are good or hey, these are bad, we've seen this before. I'm going to come over with my matrix selected, and we're going to come over and do some formatting. So I'm in the paint, I'm going to come on down, and I'm going to click on conditional formatting. And you have lots of options. I'm just going to do font color for this one because that's a really easy one to see. And if I do that right away, what happens is you see some numbers have changed based on the default settings of the theme that we're in. And if you see that the totals here, they didn't change. They're still that bold and black. Only the actual values within changed. Well, now we have an advanced control that we can do. So I'm going to click on advanced controls. And from here, we now have this new option. This is what's in here before, apply to. It was only always applied to the values, but now we can apply this conditional formatting to values, values and totals, or just totals only. So I'm just going to click totals only real quick and come over and see what that does. So now I'm going to click on OK. And here, since we're doing totals only, this is the one thing. It doesn't pick the minimum and the maximum for you. Instead, you have to put in that minimum and that maximum value. So for this one, I'm just going to put in some numbers to play with because I kind of remember our data here. I'm going to put 0 as the lowest. I'm going to come over here for maximum, put in my 20 million number. So 20, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then let's make this diverging, get some good colors in here. So red is probably going to be the bad stuff. Green means we're doing good because this is all profit that I'm looking at right here. So I'm just going to put in a quick green, get some yellow in the middle. I'm going to click on OK. Oh, I got to put in my center. Forgot that. So I got 20 million, so I'm going to go 10 million for the middle. Going to click OK. And now I have it just with the totals. Now my values didn't change. Only my totals changed. So this is where you're going to have to figure out. As I was playing with this, I said, okay, well, maybe I want it for the values and the totals. So I'm just going to come back into the advanced controls. I'm going to switch this over to the values and the totals. I'm going to click on OK. And see, this is where we can run into a little bit of an issue because I have to predefine my lowest and my largest. And with this, the largest is that 29 million.
Right.
So these think about if we went down to the day level. Now they're all going to be pretty much washed out to be the same because nothing is going to compare to that 29 million number.
Right.
So it's a great feature, but it's only going to work in certain situations. So you're going to be very cognizant of how you decide to use that.
Yeah, you got to figure out where it makes sense to properly display here for sure, no doubt. Cool. Well, that's an interesting one. The thing I think we're going to be looking at then is discussing the AI components, right? And so previously they didn't work in all scenarios. So what's the change that's happening there?
That is correct. For our AI ones now it actually works with your direct query.
Okay.
And before then, it didn't work. And so now a new update with that is also our decomp trees, we're now going to be able to use those with the direct queries.
Okay.
And there's another thing with the decomp trees that we also get. Like I said, there's so many features that they've updated this month. One of the other things now is we can actually add a tooltip to the decomp trees. Okay. And previously, the tooltips weren't there.
Easy enough. You want to show that one real quick?
Yeah, let's show that one real quick.
While we're here, by the way, let's go ahead and knock out another one. The one we're going to look at next is the, what's the other one?
The customizing your themes. And so a lot of you, if you have that new ribbon experience put on, you're used to this and seeing it. But they've done a few little updates of how the themes are located and listed down. For those of you who have not had that new ribbon experience put on, get ready for it because it's going to be default very soon.
Okay, cool. Let's take a look. All right.
All right, so I'm just over here. I'm going to click on my decomp tree page. And so what we have here is a decomp tree. And right now, and this was the preview beforehand, or not preview, what was before the preview, is you do not have a tooltip. And so, I can go over here, but if I want something to pop out at me to give me a little bit more information, I can now turn the tooltip on.
Okay.
And just like you've done in other visuals, we would select, going to hit on our formatting, tooltip, we're going to turn it on.
Is it off by default?
It's off by default. Okay. So I'm going to turn that tooltip on. And now when I hover over, it's going to give me that pop out.
Okay.
And again, if you don't want that tooltip and you want to customize your tooltip, you can always link it into another tooltip page, or as like we like to call it, Pragmatic Works, a cool tip page.
A cool tip.
Cool tip page. But so it's nice. But previously you didn't have that availability.
I like it.
And so while we're here, actually let me go to the personal because we've got more visuals on our landing page here. So let's talk about that customizing your themes and where they're at. So I'm up here in the view ribbon, and I see my themes that I currently have. Now, one thing that I just never took note of, never needed to, but as reading my literature, just for you to know out there, your current theme is always the farthest one on the left.
Okay.
You know, you would think it'd maybe be something in the middle, at least I did, but it's always going to be farthest on the left. If we click on the drop down, right now it's telling us what we currently have as our theme. And we can pick all of our themes like normal. But what if we want to customize it? So I'm going to go down and click on Customize Current Theme. Going to make a few quick little changes here just so we can actually see something change.
And this part itself is not new.
No.
But yeah, there's other pieces here that are, right?
Yes. And so in order for me to actually see some effects, now I'm going to apply this. I'm going to apply. And so now, okay, I've got that. Great. Now when I click on the drop down, because I've customized my theme, on the far left, it says Current Theme is Custom. Click on the drop down. Current Theme is Custom. All right. Now, again, it just says custom theme. If you want to put a name with that, if we go back into customize current theme, I can actually name this. So I can just say the digest theme. And we click on apply. Once we zoom out here.
Oh, it's just dragged down.
This is dragged way down. We'll get rid of that for now.
We get it, yeah.
But we get it. And then it would say right here next to custom, it would say pragmatic.
Gotcha.
Something different that you might not, or you will notice at some point, is once we get onto here, is that when you normally would make and customize a theme that you wanted to use later, you would have had, it keeps going away from me, scroll down a little bit too much. You would have had export current theme.
Right.
Now you've got save current theme.
Okay.
So just a minor tweak
Yeah.
tweak to the lingo. Yeah.
Fair enough. Easy enough. All right. The next item that we're going to look at then is going to be around the Q&A updates.
Actually, before we do Q&A, let's do conditional formatting.
Oh, another conditional formatting.
There's another conditional formatting one that we can do, which I think is kind of neat. So the first one was just only an update to the matrix visual.
Right.
But now we can do conditional formatting from one visual based off of a completely different field that's not even part of the visual.
That's an important one. I can't miss that one. So let's take a look at that.
Yeah, let's take a look at that one. And I called this one a conditional background. So I've got this card feature over here, and it's giving me the total profit. And I've got a slicer that's going to give me the profit by year. But we all know that profit is a great metric, but profit margin added on top of that is also a really good thing to see.
Mm-hmm.
So what I want to do is I want my card to change based on profit margin.
Okay.
The higher the profit margin, the better it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my card visual. I'm going to come all the way over to the paint again so that we can format. And then when we go down here, what I'm going to change is I'm going to change the background. I want the background to be changed. So right now, color is white. Before this preview feature, you never saw the function notation here, f of x as I like to call it. But now this means you're allowed to provide some conditional logic to the formatting.
Okay.
So I'm going to click on it. And from here, what I'm going to do is see where it says based on field. Right now it's sum of sales amount because that's what we currently have in the card.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to be that though. We can pick our very own other field.
Ah.
So what I want to put in here is my profit margin, and which is a measure, and we're allowed to use measures in these as well. So profit margin. And I'm going to turn it into, let's turn it into diverging. And I'm going to say, because I know this data, so 0.40 is the lowest, 0.41 is the highest usually, and 0.42. We have really good profit margins. They stay very consistent from year to year to year. So, and let's make sure we can really see this. I'm going to change this color up here to red real quick. We'll keep that yellow. And then let's change this into that crazy neon green. All right, so now, I'm going to do this. So I'm going to do this all over again, but without doing the zoom in. Because every time we're zooming in here, it's not letting me click on the OK.
Yeah,
it's moving it. So we're going to go 0.40. We're going to go 0.41. And they're saying those are not good values because of my sum of sales. I'm going to change that back over into our profit margin again.
There we go. All right.
And then let me just make sure that we can really see it. And I'll just go and we'll keep it blue this time.
Sure.
So we're going to click on OK. So 2.99 million based off of our profit margin. We've got the red. And then we go to 2006. So profit margin went up a little bit. So we're looking better. And then so we see growth. So we see that year to year to year, our profit margin is going up.
And again, this is based off of not necessarily the fields that are displayed here, but profit margin. In this case.
And I know I have profit margin as this visual over here, so you could track it to make sure we're not lying to you. But you don't even have to have this visual on here for this to actually work.
Yeah, makes sense.
What you might want to do if you're not going to have another visual is maybe put a little tooltip here. Say colors are changing based off of profit margin. So you would want your end user to have some little, experience of why things are happening the way they are.
That makes sense. I like it. All right, so back to where I was heading a moment ago that I was jumping the gun on. Q&A. So Q&A, question answer, one of the great features of Power BI, but they made some improvements to it, right?
Yeah, and so with Q&A, we use it a lot in the desktop to get insights into our own data.
Yeah.
But where Q&A really has the biggest benefit, I think, is for that end user, so that they can ask their questions. But sometimes an end user gets this report, and it's their first time looking at it, they're not familiar with the data, and we want to highlight this Q&A feature, but if we give it to them, they might not know what questions to ask. Now, Power BI comes up with some default questions, but maybe those default questions aren't really what you want your end user to be focusing on.
Right.
So we can suggest questions to them now.
Oh, I like it. Let's take a look.
I'm going to pull up a different report. And thing to mention, the Q&A does not work in the direct query. So if you have a direct query source, you cannot use your Q&A feature here. So I've pulled up something that's a non-direct query. And to get Q&A, one of the easiest ways to do it is we just double click in any white space on our report page, and it's going to pull up the Q&A. And again, it says, hey, try one of these to get started because it's looked at all of our data. Well, we want to change that. So I'm going to hit the gear icon in my Q&A, and it's going to pull up my Q&A navigator box. And you can read through here. They got a lot of good little helpful hints in here, but we're going to go straight to the meat of things. We're going to go to suggest questions. And so we can put in our first question of what we want. And let's just go with, we're talking profit. We're going to go with what country had highest profit margin? And we can put this in, and it tells us Canada had the highest profit margin. So if I want that to be part of it, I click on Add. And what this will now do is when we publish this out to the service, and they click on Q&A, this is going to be the first one that comes up for them. And you can put as many suggested questions as you want.
So it's kind of saved over here where this says try one of these to get started.
Yeah.
Very cool. And that's not all that came out with Q&A, right?
That's not all they came up with Q&A.
That's not all.
That's not all. There's one more thing that's pretty cool. And it's Teach Q&A. So I'm going to discard that one. So Teach Q&A. So what happens is sometimes, and if you've worked with Q&As in the past, you've had to use synonyms in the modeling view to like this data field. It says profit, but maybe we want to call it sales so that those two are used interchangeably. But another thing that's now featured with Teach Q&A is you can tell Power BI what your measures actually mean as well.
Okay,
so the measures that we define, we can do as well. And so we're just going to do a really quick one here. I'm just going to put in, we're going to go we'll go with this time, what country was profitable? And I'm just going to click submit. So there's this red thing going, I don't know what you mean by profitable. So I'm just going to click submit. And it's going to say, okay, what does profitable mean for you? Sales territory countries that have and profits come from our sales amount measure. So sales amount. And it's looking for it in there. So sales amount. So we can click there. And then from here, we can say like sales amount that, and they're just going to give you some predefined ones. So let's go with what they think, because they're always analyzing our data for us. The sales amount greater than this, we're going to say are profitable countries.
Sure, just test it out.
Yeah.
And it looks like on the right-hand side, it's giving you a little preview of what the results would look like.
Yep.
Looks like the NAs got pulled out when we did that.
And this word profitable could be any adjective. We could say what country was successful. And they're going to say, well, what defines success for you?
Yeah.
And you can use your measures in there as well. So anytime you use a measure name that we've made, like if I had made that measure for total sales amount, I started putting that in there, they find it.
So if you have really commonly used adverbs or things like that that define what your business means or things about your business, then you could use the Teach Q&A area to really define in your data, how do you correlate that, right?
Yeah.
Very cool. So I think the last couple things we can just kind of talk about, we have a few updates that came with the Query Diagnostics section of the Power Query Editor. There were some updates where you have some additional performance counters now that you can look at. You can really kind of fine-tune which performance counters that you want to display. So just peeking at our notes here a little bit, we have processor time, total processor time, I/O data bytes. There's all kinds of new counters in there that you can now use to analyze your query performance.
Yep, in your query diagnostics now, you can choose what outputs you want from that diagnostic. Rather than just having the set ones, you can say, these are the ones I'm really the most interested in.
That's perfect. And then there was some new data connectors in. There was a new common data model folder data connector for your Azure Data Lake 2, and a few other kind of nice little things like that that have been added in through this release. So I think that's pretty much it. There's a lot.
Like I said, a lot. And, and from this, the one thing I always say is, like, with all these updates, cherry pick what is going to be most useful to you. Because not all these things are going to be useful to you, so pick the ones that you can now start using at your work or your personal scenarios or whatever you're using Power BI for.
Absolutely. Now, again, this is the April release given to you in May, so you will likely see another video and another update in May, so you'll actually have 2 updates coming this month, and we'll have another video for you once that release is out as well, but look forward to sharing some of those new features with you once the time comes for it. So, again, keep watching. If you like the video, of course, like it on YouTube here with us. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe so you can see any of our new videos that are coming out. And we'd love to, of course, share with you some of the more details of how you can work with Power BI through our training. So we deliver our training through our on-demand learning as well as on-site training as well. So if any of those things may be interesting to you, of course, let us know. And again, I'm Devin Knight.
I'm Matt Peterson. Maybe I'll have a haircut the next time.
All right, we'll see you then. Thanks.